place. And today we're going to be starting off this new journey in Couture Barbershop. And I mentioned the person that owns this barbershop, that owns this facility on here in the previous podcast episodes. So shout out to Johnny. He's in the building literally right now as we speak. And this podcast, as I always say in the introduction, this is about being the highest version of yourself that you can possibly be. That's always the goal. And bring whatever it is that you got to bring to this world to help others. And we've been going down a serious rabbit hole within the last 5 episodes. And it's been pertaining to every single thing that I've been talking about with revolving around the question of who am I? And we've been going really deep with this, and I'm still feeling the vibe that we got to keep going in this direction. And on the last previous podcast episode, I believe I left off on following your way, which has been the biggest thing that I've been putting a big focus on. And today we're going to be looking at that from another different aspect and approaching it in another different way. And for this one, it's going to end in practicality, as it always do, but like really straightforward today. So buckle in. We are officially going down the rabbit hole. So was something from the Red Book, somebody that's been influenced a lot of this information that I've been communicating. And of course that's Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist. And this is in regards to like following your way. And this was a letter that he was addressing to his friends that was editing the Red Book. And in his draft, it's on page 9. It says, "Follow your way. It is no teaching and no instruction that I can give you. On what basis should I resume to teach you? I give you news of this way, of this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path. I cannot teach you." Unquote. Don't be an example for someone else's life, because who will live your own life? And this brings me to the different types of introspection, which is how we going to go down this road that we're about to go down. And for those of y'all that don't know what introspection mean, I'm real big on, understanding things on its most basic level. And the definition of introspection is the examination or observation of one's own mental and emotional process. So this goes towards this idea of going towards the ideal, right? And we all have an ideal version of ourselves, and that is oftentimes guiding us. And we are either one of two things. We are either in alignment with the ideal, or we in disalignment with the ideal. And this is part of the way which points to the ideal self. And in this book that I'm currently reading, and this was given to me by Johnny, Philosophy of Mind, there's this concept that they talk about, which is called the mind to body problem. And it points to first 5 things, which they call the 5 obvious philosophical facts. And the first one is you have a mind and you have a body. The second fact is these normally work together. And we're going to be going back to a bunch of these going forward. And the third one is your body is physical and thus publicly observable. So due to the fact that you can see your body, that makes it a physical thing. And the fourth one is your mental life is essentially private. Therefore, going into the fifth fact, you have privileged access to the contents of your own mind. So this points out 2 distinct things. The mind and body are separate, and also, paradoxically speaking, they also together at the same time. And normally, as we look at the fact number 2, those two are normally working together. But now we're going to be focusing on disalignment because that's where a bunch of us are right now. And no one can experience your mental life because it's private. And going back to the way. So if you don't actualize the ideal within yourself and don't realize this within yourself, you won't be able to see it in matter itself. It's just going to be stuck in its place of the mental, which only you can associate with. There's a quote in here: I think, therefore I am. And this dude, Rene Descartes, I think that's his name. Last name right. He's a French philosopher, and he came up with this term, I think, therefore I am. And this is the first principle of his philosophy. And this was a method of meditation that he used to get to the bottom of doubt, all the way up to the bottom of doubt. And for example, one of the quotes that is mentioned from him, which he heavily meditated on, is if I'm doubting, I must exist. And if I'm thinking, I must exist. And another quote in this is if I doubt, I must have a mind. If I think, I must have a mind. Therefore, I cannot doubt that I have a mind. So through the forms of meditation, active imagination, prayer, whatever it is to cultivate this ideal within yourself is very, very important. And this goes back to that introspection that I was talking about and the three questions that's essential that you got to ask yourself. Who am I? Where am I going? And what is the third question? What is my purpose? That's the ultimate one, the most important one. And this leads to the importance of having a goal. A lot of us don't have the proper goal, the goal that's going to put us in alignment. The goals that we typically have are ones that's going to keep us disaligned to this ideal version of ourselves. And when we stay out of line with that, it puts that ideal in the dark, and it makes that ideal very, very, very hard to see, even for yourself. And going back to that fifth observable fact, you have privileged access to the contents of your own mind. But when you're not tapped in to that access of your own mind, you look for examples that's outside of yourself. And now you're disaligned. And you're not in the proper order. You're not in the proper state to stay aligned to what you got to do. What does this look like for us right now? And right now we are in a serious mental health crisis, especially here in America. And there's an increase in sadness, hopelessness, anxiety, and it stems from a bunch of things. A lot of things that I talked about is death, seeing death, relationships that change, divorce, breakups, and this feeling of being alone, right? And like I said, this makes the ideal very, very weak, and it makes it very, very dark. And the sole purpose of the ideal is to be realized and actualized in your everyday life. And going back to the five of obvious philosophical facts, your number two, these normally work together. That being your mind, that being your body. The ideal is associated with your mind, but it's also associated with your body if you live it out. And oftentimes, if you're not living it, that means that you can't see it as well. And it's a lot of different aspects to looking at this and handling this. And this has a lot to do with something that I talk about with recognizing your potential. And that last one is the third one. Your body is physical and thus make it publicly observable, right? So this must take shape through a goal. This must take shape through some sort of form. I broke down the 6 forms previously on other podcast episodes, which is like activities that you can partake in to possibly create a skill. These goals brings us to that ideal, and that ideal brings us to a state of unity. I am leads to be, which is the way. Taking action, the journey. And the journey consists of 2 things and possibly 3. And the third one is a reward for the first 2 if you gain understanding for what the first 2 for what they are for your journey. And the first one is changes. Everything is bound to change. That's the only constant. That's something that I preach on this podcast all the time. And this leads to the concept that I talk about of integrating your purpose into a goal through a service, which is what I just talked about by developing a form through those 6 things that I just talked about, right? And for Carl Jung, going back to him, and it's another dude named Abraham Maslow. And Abraham Maslow has the hierarchy of needs, and at the top of that pyramid, the last one I believe is self-actualization. And Carl Jung pretty much wrote that red book, and that was the premise of the process of individuation. And every single thing that I'm talking about has to do with the process of individuation, where you recognize yourself as distinct from everything around you, but at the same time, you're connected to everything around you. When you don't know this is, yet again, being on a dead horse, something that I talk about. Chaos ensues. Chaos is a part of that other world when there's no order, when there's no meaning. And you got to go out and find that. And you go out and find that through the challenges by accepting them. And you accept them within first. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, you can't put your experiences of growth into external things. And what I mean by external is outside of yourself. And outside of your body, what do you find? You're going to find people, you're going to find places, and you're going to find things. And like I said, this is real deep stuff. This is soul work that I'm talking about. How do you get to the self? Self and I is 2 different things. And that's the same thing with the mind and the body. But this relates to the mind solely. And if you don't take action towards these things, there's no way that they're going to come about. And this goes back to another concept that I want to talk about when it comes to life itself and living. Life itself is dead when it's not lived. You have to live life. And living is a state of being, which is a part of unity. I don't know what just happened, but which is a part of that unity. So, all in all, throughout time, throughout history, we are going to be faced with so many different things that's going to make us or break us. That's going to have us either with those 2 options of what I said in comparison with the ideal, which we're going to either be aligned to it or we're going to be disaligned to it. And when we're disaligned to it, we get this idea of where we at right now, of the mental health crisis. And the way that people are solving it is drawing them more and more into a shitty way of living, to be quite honest, to be straightforward. And this takes constant effort, and it takes time. It takes patience. And a lot of us got to learn how to weather storms when they present itself. When there's a snowstorm outside, I guess if there's a hurricane, if we want to get really extreme, if it's a thunderstorm, if we want to be light, you're not going to be outside while these things are happening. You're going to be inside. when a butterfly is transitioning into a caterpillar is transitioning into a butterfly, it cocoons itself. It goes in a place of solitude, and that's introspection. And this develops that process of developing your mind and developing your emotions. Going back to Abraham Maslow, going back to Carl Jung, the process of individuation and self-actualization. You have to live these things that's within you, because that's what's to come. And life becomes scary when you get close to that expiration date, which I always talk about. When it comes close to you dying, and you know that it's a lot of stuff that's unlived, you didn't live it, and you understand what life is, but a part of you don't understand it because you didn't live it for yourself. Going back to that disconnect, going back to that disalignment. We see it all the time. And it's outside of ourselves. Typically things that's outside of ourselves is destructive. I'm not going to beat on the dead horse yet again, because I've been talking about this at this point for the last, I want to say, I'm not even going to lie, going on the last 6, 7 podcast episodes, but I'm laying down the importance of why must you serve your purpose, and understanding what your purpose is. Like that's so important. So you're not aimlessly out here just wandering. And my focus as of late, relating back to purpose served, is figuring out actual methods for people to get this done in their own way. And I talked about these methods in a nutshell, but going back to 4 of them specifically to handle your journey and to be able to look at your journey from past, present, and future. And these 4 methods, which if you guys have been tuning in, the OGs that's been listening for a minute, y'all already know about these. But for those of you that's new and listening, these 4 methods are designed for you to go from ideas to results, simply put. And that's a process. And oftentimes, it's not about that goal. It's not about getting that physical thing. It's not about getting that promotion. It's not about getting rich. It's not about getting that girl or that dude that you've been praying for or hoping for. It's about a state of being within yourself. For the last 20 minutes, that's high key what I've been talking about, and not putting it towards things like that. Because once you receive those things, another thing that I talk about is disillusionment. You're going to be disappointed. And it's that feeling that we all get when we get a new car. And after a while, the new car don't have that same feeling that it once had when we had it for like a week, when we had it for a day, and we were so excited to drive it. 3 years later, it don't have that feeling. It's just serving this purpose of getting you from point A to point B, which that was really the goal. That's really the goal. That was the ideal. Just using example that we all can high key relate to. But like I said, going back to these methods, the real goal is to integrate your purpose into a goal through a service, taking action, getting your mind and your body on track. The first 5 obvious philosophical facts was pointing to what this book was generally starting point is highlighting the mind and body problem. Something I've been talking about with the mental health crisis, where it's obviously presenting a mind and body problem. And not to get sensitive, but I'm going to get sensitive, is that within the last like 3 years, especially in America with the pandemic, suicide rates has been going up, which is highlighting directly to that. Oh, there we go. The rates have been going up within the last 3 years due to the fact of the pandemic. And I pointed out what the pandemic did for literally all of us. It made the world sit still for a little bit. And all of us was left with no choice but to think about our lifestyle, feel our lifestyle. And a lot of us, it made us truly, truly uncomfortable. And for me personally, I talked about what 2020 that year did to me. It was a lot of changes in my life that was going on. Like I said in the beginning of that year, starting with January, I got hit with those those losses that lead to mental health crisis and the causes. One of them I talked about. In fact, both of them I talked about. In January 26th of 2020. This is a Sunday. Of course, I can't forget it. Um, I got news. My phone started blowing up, and Kobe got into that helicopter crash, and everybody started blowing up my phone because they knew the impact that Kobe had on my life, and that shook me up. That shook me up to my core. And one of the conversations that I had, it was I was talking to my mom, and she really she really wanted to know if I was all right, and I really wasn't. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even gonna lie. It was somebody that I thought at one point that I was gonna meet, but through that tragedy, I recognized something deep within myself. It sent me, inside, introspecting, and I realized that, like I said before on the previous podcast episodes, that he had his way, I had to find mine. And his way was leading me closer to my own way. You know? But this shook me up. I had to take a different approach. I still was in a basketball frenzy mindset. And then fast forward the 3 months, the pandemic popped off. The basketball world shut down. And at that point, that was my world. I was training every single day, 3 times a day, 6 hours. And I was training other people as well, on top of me training. So all in all, I was working at a gym, I was training in the gym, and I was training other people in the gym. So I want to say 10 hours at least out of my day, every single day, pretty much 6 to 7 days a week was spent in the gym. And I didn't mind it because I was already conditioned for that, mind and body, because of the pandemic, sending me inward. And I tell y'all, personally speaking, I had to question myself, and I had to really ask myself, was chasing my dream a mistake? Was going for playing basketball a mistake? Because it felt like it led me into a trap, honestly speaking. But through this, opportunities came about during that summer where I thought I wasn't going to be playing basketball, but I ended up playing basketball in Vegas, and I ended up playing basketball in North Carolina during the pandemic. And even before that, I lost my aunt as well, which hit heavy, real heavy, and sent me even more inward. And due to these unexpected losses that seemed like it was hitting real close to home, it started making me, of course, started making me remember that we all got that date, that stamp. We don't know when that hour or that second is going to hit. But before that, I always had this motive and this drive within me I have to do what I got to do before that moment come. And I made a commitment at 20, 22, 23 that was going to be the case, and not knowing what that was going to lead me to. And it led me here talking to y'all, and it led me here to starting to present these 4 methods, right? So the first method is the concept of the roadmap. And the roadmap is designed to help you simply create a goal, right? This goal is to help you, provide you with a sense of direction. A lot of us don't have a great sense of direction. The direction that we headed towards is headed towards disalignment because it's outside of ourselves. So this roadmap is centered around the concept of awareness and motion that I talk about, having a vision, going on that journey, and getting to that destination, which ties in that mind and body working together, eliminating that problem of the mind and body. And now this moves to the second method, right? Now that we have a direction, we need a plan to go to this direction, right? And right now, the direction is pointing towards the ideal. That's the focus, right? That's the reward, the balance to the changes and the challenges. So the second one is a 5-step plan of action. And within 5 steps, this is designed to have you have a plan for this goal that you have, this direction and aim that you headed towards. The third one is the purpose-served pyramid, and this method is designed for you to align your behaviors with the purpose, with the ideal, with the goal. And with that, it starts the effort, the time and process that goes into the process of individuation, self-actualization. And this leads to the fourth concept or method, and that's the C.O.L.E system that I talk about. And the C.O.L.E system is a method to help you integrate your purpose into your goal in a proper setting so it can fully take shape. And then you'll be able to see in an observable way the mental ideal that you have set out for yourself. So you recognized it within yourself, and then you brought it out. So it's a simple 4-step process. And now I have them on my website. I finally finished, people. So all of this, this capping I've been doing, I finally finished. So thank y'all for being extremely, extremely, extremely patient with me. It's been a tough challenge to bring this about and finding these things within myself, honestly speaking, and actualizing it and crystallizing it. And now I'm at the point where it has to be released. And that's presenting a new challenge for me personally speaking right now, you know? And I'm always talking about going into spaces that's unknown for me and staying locked into that, because that lets me know always that I'm growing. And I'm always staying in this thing where I'm uncomfortable. I am. And I'm getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's the only way to really, really, really go through this individuation process. You have to find all of these things deep down within yourself, and they present itself. They become very, very clear. And I think that for those of you that's been tuning in, y'all really starting to see and feel that. Truly. Truly. And I'm seeing y'all. And like I always say, I really, really appreciate y'all for like hanging on. Because this is the hardest work that you could commit to. Because it has everything to do with yourself. And if it stays locked in, that ideal stays locked in into the dark, that's going to cause some true misery that you're going to have to cast on the external things. It's going to drive you fucking nuts, to be straightforward with you. It's going to drive you crazy. So you have to put in the due diligence, to do work. And going back to another concept that I talk about, going into that wilderness, going into that desert, that's that introspection that I was talking about earlier in this episode. I don't like really using terms like that as much as I really do, but it's to create a purpose and an understanding for where I'm trying to take y'all and where I'm trying to lead y'all. And going back to Carl Jung, that was his way. I'm presenting y'all my way. And hopefully this way help y'all find your way. That's the whole point of me doing this. And I said from day one, literally from the very first podcast episode, that I was going to be y'all guinea pig, because I was going to be my own guinea pig first. So all of the stuff that I'm going through, I didn't have this planned out, and I've been talking about this whole entire time, just to let y'all know that something is moving within me to bring this out, and I don't know what it is. And sometimes, straight up, to be open and honest with y'all, it's scary. But I told y'all, a part of me don't give a shit because I know that's what it is. I'm going to go. And it's so many people throughout history that I recognize that did that. I was just reading this book about Frederick Douglass. And Jelly. Johnny behind the camera, I just got to acknowledge that we live and direct. Yeah. But going back to Frederick Douglass, it's something that's been hitting me all this year, which has been driving my purpose through the roof. Is getting in contact with my ancestral history and the generations that came before me. And this is why I talked about the conversation that I had with my grandmother about what her childhood was like and what her parents was like and her grandparents. And another vulnerable thing, and it's something that sharing with y'all personally. I never got to experience my granddad's. And this going to go tie into Frederick Douglass. Because this is a part of that generational thing that I'm trying to overcome. Because I got people that I know that's going to come after me. And I'm a trailblazer, and people are watching. People are looking. Because I did the same thing to other people, external things. But the truth is, this stuff is resonating within you first before it's coming from outside. Sound crazy, but if you understand, you'll have that balance and understanding and know. That's a part of the ideal. But I never got a chance to meet my dad's dad, and I only got a chance to meet my mom's dad one time, and that was in prison. Stereotypical, you know? And this has presented a huge challenge to me and my own dad with how to be a man. Normally, ideally, the father teaches the son the trade of the family business and pass it down so the son can improve and do the same exact thing as a way to provide. Going back to those forms, those 6 ones that I was talking about, finding a form and then molding your skills to leave your mark, which is impact. But when that's broken up and that's disaligned, where do you start? Do you start making excuses? Hell nah, we don't do that here. We throw that shit out the window. To be quite honest, we take responsibility here. We take accountability for everything. Life sucks. I point that out all the time. But don't have no victim mindset. Don't have no survival mindset. You was programmed since day one with every single thing that you need. Your gift came with you from the rip. From the rip. And going back to this timestamp of 37 minutes now, these 37 minutes is talking about that thing that you was blessed with, that gift that I'm always talking about. Dead horse alert. Beating on a dead horse. You got to cultivate that. Because just because life exists, life itself can be dead when it's unlived if you're not living it. And that's what caused these mental health issues and these crises that make somebody that actually feel like they want to die. Deep stuff. I had to go down to the bottom of that to bring this up. You guys understand? So that's a part of the struggles that I had to deal with to get to this, because every single thing that I'm talking about, in real life affected me in my life. And if y'all go back to the previous podcast, I don't talk about this stuff directly because my life ain't what this is about. My accomplishments, all of that stuff, I don't really highlight that. Because to me, it don't really matter. It matters to a certain extent, to a certain context, but the ideal mattered to me, and purpose in itself mattered to me, and service towards that purpose is the most important thing to me, to anything. That's everything's essential reason for living, towards that ideal, that unseen. And I got off track. But Frederick Douglass, he lived a crazy life. And as a kid, he recognized what being a slave actually was, what being somebody else's property actually was at like 8, 9 years old. His grandma walking him 12 miles to a different plantation than they own to go be taken in as somebody else's property, just to drop him off and walk 12 miles back to her own plantation where she had to wake up first thing in the morning and get to it. And this kid was shown the cruelties of life in that time. And if you were black in America around that time, you wasn't a human being. You was property. They were going to measure you out. They're going to figure out what your skills were, and then they was going to put you to use externally. They didn't care about what you had going on inside, right? That's the lineage that I come from. And for him, you wasn't allowed to read, you wasn't allowed to write, which cultivates that mind, which is going back to those 5 obvious philosophical facts. I'm not going to keep repeating them. At this point, I've repeated them enough. But he had to cultivate this with outside of himself. And his main priority, once he figured out that slavery couldn't have been it, and started seeing outside of himself that people were running away, that sparked something within himself that, yo, life is actually bigger than slavery. His environment, his circumstances. And he took that risk. And he was met with challenges. And going back to the journey, the first original thing, things was always changing. He was getting sent to this plantation, that plantation, and his masters had it out for him. And he was very defiant. And he stood on his freedom without even really understanding what that was. Those was the type of people that paved the way. And even outside of that, throughout history, there's been so many people like that who's been put in conditions and circumstances like that, but they take different forms and they take different shapes throughout history, depending on how you look at it. Perspective. And going back to Rene Descartes, if I said his name properly, I think, therefore I am. That's that thing taking many different shapes. But existence is existence. And if you can think about it and you can have doubt, that means you're experiencing that, which points to existence. And going way back when, we pointed out in the hidden messages of water, existence is vibration. There was 3 important words in that book which highlight the whole experiment of everything within that book. And this goes back to what I'm saying now. So all of these things, they're interconnected. They're not separate. So the mind and body, they're not separate. They're actually connected. They just serve 2 different purposes for one thing. And when you combine that, Carl Jung calls this thing the supreme meaning, which is above meaning and it's above meaninglessness. It combines the 2. It's the bridge. And we are that bridge. And that's what it means for that way. Finding your way. And don't be an example of somebody else's way. And that's when them challenges truly, truly present itself. Because another thing that I highlight on here is your uniqueness. Another one of you will never, ever come again. I put that on everything. So you have a gift that you got to bring out. It is your sole responsibility. And that points to the ideal every single time. It don't point to nowhere else. And this ideal is kind of separate from you, but it's with you at the same time. It's a guiding force. And like I said, going back to the beginning of this podcast episode, you're either going to be aligned with it or you're going to be disaligned with it. And it's going to show in the physical appearance of your body, whether you're aligned or disaligned. That's why you can talk the talk, but that walk you walk, it's not going to lie. It never does. That's the truth on what effort that you're actually putting in towards the ideal. And not your ideal, but the ideal. Let that guide you. And these worksheets that I'm talking about with the 4 goal setting methods is to point you in that direction, to guide you, to find your own way, and put that effort in. And like I said, these 4 methods present past, present, and future. You'll be able to look back on the things that you wrote down and see, are you matching the behavior? You set out the ideal, you can physically see it. You don't have an excuse of a mind-body problem. You don't. Now, you got to realize and actualize it. You got to crystallize it. That's what it means going on that journey, that walk that I keep talking about. That's the definition of finding your way. And that's going towards the ideal. So this brings me to the end of the podcast episode. To show you guys, to show support, please go in the description below. Like, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, download the podcast. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Ideas to Results guidebook is done. So that's available for purchase on the Purpose Served website. And I'm going to be putting that in the link in the description below, whether you're watching me or listening to me. It's all available for you guys right now. It took a lot for me to bring this out, but we here, and this is moving us to the next phase of this journey for us all. And yet again, I love every single last one of y'all that be tuning in. And y'all got to have that same love and appreciation for yourselves, most importantly, But all in all, serve your purpose. Treat the purpose as if it's the goal and take action towards it. That's the service part. Last but not least, yeah. Deuces.